This is going to be an introduction video on how to read music, and it's going to focus more on rhythms and not so much note names. So, the first thing you need to know is what your staff is. Your staff is going to be these 5 lines right here. Next is a time signature. A very common time signature is 4/4, and that means the top 4 means that there's going to be 4 beats or counts in a measure, and the bottom 4 means that the quarter note gets the beat. The first note we'll talk about is the quarter note. The quarter note looks like this, and it's going to be filled in, and it gets 1 count, or 1 beat. So, since our time signature has this 4, which means that there can be 4 counts, or 4 beats in a measure, that means this can have 4 quarter notes, because it's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4. The next note to talk about is a half note. A half note looks a lot like a quarter note. It looks like this, but it's not going to be filled in. And a half note is worth 2 counts. So if we placed a half note in this measure, it'd be counted 1 for the quarter note, and then the half note would be counts 2 and 3, and then 4 for the last quarter note. A half note is just the quarter note being doubled. And there's another note called a whole note, which is just a circle, and that's a half note being doubled. So it's going to be worth 4 counts. If we had a whole note in this measure, it would take up all 4 counts. Just like how a quarter note is a half note, but in half, a quarter note can also be broken down. And if you split that in half, you're going to get an eighth note, which looks like this. And it's counted 1 and. If you put a half note in this measure, this would be counted 1, 2, 3, 4, and. Aside from just notes, there are also rests in music. For every note, there's a corresponding rest, so a time that you don't play. For a whole note, there's a whole rest, which looks like this. It's also worth 4 counts, just like a whole note is. There's a half rest, which looks a lot like a whole rest, but it's only worth 2. And there's also a quarter rest, which looks something like this, and it's worth 1. There's eighth rests, but we're not going to get into that because they're a little more complicated. So as you can see in this measure, we have a half rest, so that'd be 1, 2, then a quarter note, so 3, and then a quarter rest, so 4. So you'd rest for 2 counts, play on the third, and then rest for the last one. That's it for this video, and I hope it helped.